Have you ever really stopped to think about what happens after you take that first sip of a drink? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're taking a journey inside the body to follow the path of alcohol, from that initial buzz all the way to the lasting impact. Let's get into it.
It seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? But the answer, well, it's way more complex than you might think. We tend to focus on the big picture, but the real story of how alcohol affects us starts with that very first sip.
You can almost picture it like a line of dominoes. Even a tiny amount of alcohol can tip that first one over, setting off a whole chain reaction inside your body. And as you can probably guess, the more you drink, the bigger and more serious those dominoes get.
So let's start right at the beginning. What happens in those first few minutes, those first few hours after a drink? These are the immediate effects, the stuff that happens right now.
Okay, these first signs are probably pretty familiar to a lot of us, right? See, alcohol is a depressant, which basically means it slows down your brain's communication network. And that's exactly why you might start to notice your speech getting a little less clear, your vision getting kind of blurry, or a sudden wave of sleepiness hitting you.
But here's the thing, those feelings are really just the symptoms on the surface. What's actually happening underneath is a disruption to your entire central nervous system. This isn't just a feeling in your head, it's a real physical change that's taking place.
And that drowsiness, it quickly leads to much bigger issues. Your coordination can get clumsy, making simple movements difficult. But, and this is crucial, alcohol messes with the part of your brain that controls judgment. This is the reason people might make risky choices they never make sober, which can, of course, lead to really dangerous situations and even serious injuries.
Okay, so there comes a point where all these effects start to pile up, and a person crosses a line, going from just feeling the effects of alcohol to being what we all call drunk. But what does that word actually mean?
You know, being drunk is a lot more than just feeling a little tipsy. It's the point where your body is so overwhelmed by alcohol that it basically triggers an emergency response. Vomiting, that's your body literally trying to get rid of a poison. Memory loss or blacking out happens when alcohol interferes with the brain's ability to create long-term memories. And losing consciousness, that's a serious sign of alcohol poisoning, a true medical emergency. This is a question a lot of us have probably had. You might have seen two people drink the exact same amount but have totally different reactions. So what's going on there? Well, the answer really comes down to a few key variables.
So it turns out it's not just about what you drink, but also about who you are and how you're drinking. The three biggest factors that decide how quickly you feel the effects are your body size, how fast you're drinking, and whether or not you've got food in your stomach.
It makes sense when you think about it. In a person with a smaller body, there's just less mass and less water to dilute the alcohol, so the concentration in their bloodstream shoots up way more quickly. On the other hand, a person with a larger body has more volume to spread that same amount of alcohol out, which really slows down its immediate impact. And it's not just about your body chemistry. What you mix with alcohol can be incredibly dangerous. Combining it with other things like drugs, cannabis, or even some prescription meds can cause really unpredictable and severe reactions. And energy drinks? That's a tricky one, because they can mask how drunk you really are, causing you to drink way more than you should. And finally, your emotional state. That plays a huge role. Drinking when you're already feeling down can make those feelings so much worse. So far, we've really been focused on the immediate risks. What can happen on a single night of drinking? But what happens when that one night turns into years and years? For some people, this is where the most devastating damage really begins. So now we're shifting gears and moving into the long-term toll of alcohol. This is all about the cumulative damage that heavy drinking can cause over many years. And believe me, the consequences can be absolutely life-altering.
Probably the most significant long-term risk of all is addiction. It's a word we hear all the time, but what does it actually mean when we're talking about alcohol dependency?
Alcohol addiction is a state of dependency, both physical and psychological. The brain actually rewires itself to the point where a person needs alcohol just to function, just to feel normal. It's not about wanting a drink anymore. It becomes a physical need. And trying to quit can trigger intense withdrawal, which makes breaking that cycle incredibly difficult. And the fallout from this addiction, it's just devastating. Physically, chronic heavy drinking can cause severe, sometimes irreversible liver damage. But that damage just radiates outward. It affects a person's ability to hold down a job, leading to financial disaster, and it can cause deep, painful fractures in family relationships. So after tracing this entire journey, from a single sip all the way to the potential for lifelong damage, what's the bottom line? Let's try and break down the key takeaways. This really lays it all out, doesn't it?
The short-term effects, like slurred speech or making some poor choices, they might seem temporary. But over time, that damage builds up, leading to these massive long-term consequences like addiction, permanent liver damage, and broken relationships. It's a clear progression from a night of bad decisions to a lifetime of challenges.
And that brings us to our final thought. We've laid out the facts, from the very first signs of impairment all the way to the long-term consequences. So we'll just leave you with this question. Knowing the full story, what does responsible drinking actually mean to you? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.